Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Bryce. How are you?
Good. I was away last week on holidays, so behind the scenes details here on Overdue Finds. We're recording this on like a Monday at like 9 a.m. So this is like the very first thing I'm doing after being off for a week.
Right.
So yeah, if I'm a little rusty today, it's probably because of that. But
We have Vacation Bryce joining
We
us
we
today.
do have Vacation Bryce joining us. The shorts are still on and t-shirt and all of that fun stuff. So, when you're on vacation, you're like, oh, I got to go back to work. But this helped today knowing that I get to start off my day by talking all about Degrassi. And this is going to be a fun one. Caroline, we've talked about doing this one for a little while, and we're finally here and recording today's episode.
It's a pretty great way to spend a Monday morning, that's for sure.
Yes.
Or
Definitely.
a Friday morning if you're listening to this the day it comes out.
That's right. Whenever you're deciding to listen to it, it's always a fun time to talk about Degrassi. I kind of almost view today's episode as almost like a continuation from our last episode where we were talking about Canadian music. These two just feel like they fit perfectly together.
Absolutely. We talked on that episode, and I'm sure we'll talk again today, that there is just something about the stuff you grow up around or that you're living amongst in there. And there are people who are probably similar to our age who maybe never sought out Degrassi, but I'm sure they would have opinions on it as well.
And joining us today to share her opinions on Degrassi, and Caroline, once again, we have a first-time guest, and we both love having first-time guests.
Very exciting.
On Overdue Finds and having different members of EPL staff join us. And today, first time on the show, we'd like to welcome Jaime Henderson to Overdue Finds. Jaime, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm finding it really hard to hold back from calling everyone Narbos and Broomheads right now.
So let everybody know which branch are you out of, and how long have you been with EPL, and what do you do?
I am a library assistant at the Millwoods branch, and I've been working for EPL for 9 years now, and I've been at Millwoods for 7 of those 9 years.
Nice. I mean, I've talked to Caroline about this, but how has it been for you, especially having people back in the branches? I know everybody's been really excited. What have I guess the patrons of Millwoods been saying about finally getting to come back?
People are really glad to be back, I think, and people have said as much. Although, with the takeout service was really great to be able to get materials in people's hands. But there is always that kind of community aspect as well. And Millwoods is such a hub in that way. And there's a lot of things that go on in the library and services that we offer that can't really be done remotely or that people might not have access to. So I think it's good that we're open, and I think people are really grateful.
I'm also kind of like the marketing rep, if you will, for our Millwoods branch. So I've been in there a few times, and it's always busy, always hopping with
yes.
so many people. So no, I'm glad to hear that patrons are so excited to be back. But one thing, Caroline, I have to ask you. Why should kids get to have all the fun?
I don't know, Bryce. You've asked me this a few weeks, and I find myself coming back to this question, and I just don't think that it's fair that they do.
I know. Well, the good news is that there's now a summer reading club for adults. From now until August 28th, both adults and teens can sign up for Summer Reads 21. Keep track of your reading hours this summer and complete some fun activities to win some great prizes, including a Nintendo Switch Lite and a book signed by Neil Gaiman. To learn more, please visit epl.ca/summer-reads. Summer Reads 21 is brought to you by the Friends of EPL. So, Caroline, I have to ask you, maybe you'll probably cover it in your Overdue Find segment, but in our Overdue Find segment, is there something that you're reading right now for summer that you're keeping track of your hours for?
I just finished a thriller. It was a Canadian thriller that was about a woman who had discovered she has a fast-acting cancer. She's got 6 weeks to live, and also she was poisoned and murdered. So she has to figure out who did it before she dies. So
The clock is ticking.
exactly. Exactly. It's very intense because some of that time is spent taking up is taken up by trying to convince other people that she's not that the idea of her being poisoned isn't just a symptom of the brain cancer that she has.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on in it. Yeah.
Nice. Sounds really good. I'm sure we'll learn about it maybe on a future episode
Maybe.
during
I have
our
to see
Overdue
how this
Finds
all
segment.
plays out. So
Definitely.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, of course, today we are talking about Degrassi, but before we get to that discussion, let's talk about our recent Overdue Finds picks. Jamie, first time on the show, what's something that you've been enjoying lately?
I am currently reading book 5 in the Outlander series, The Fiery Cross. And for those people who might live in caves and have not heard of Outlander, the series is centered around a woman from the 20th century. And she is a nurse, starts off as a combat nurse, and she somehow ends up time traveling back to the 18th century in Scotland. And I'm not going to really talk too much more about it because I don't want to reveal any spoilers, especially because I'm on book 5 and it'll give too much away if I talk about what that book is specifically about. But it's an amazing series. I find myself drifting away into it the same way that I did reading Harry Potter. I mean, this is a little bit more like maybe grown up. Not that adults can't enjoy Harry Potter because I do reread that series every few years. But yeah, I'm loving it, and I love the TV show as well.
So I have to ask, my wife is a huge fan of the TV series. She hasn't read any of the books yet,
Mhm.
but how do you know how many books there are in the series? And are they like still like making them? Like, is there new books coming out?
Yes, actually. There are currently, I believe, 8 books, and the ninth and final book is coming out in November of this year. And I, of course, have that pre ordered. And I think I'm going to pre order one for my mom as well,
Nice.
because she loves the books as well and the TV show.
It is the author Diana Gabaldon is really good at that world creating, taking
Hmm.
some of the historical, building in with the world that the characters are inhabiting, and having all of these really strong supporting characters as well. So
Hmm.
it makes a lot of sense that it's a series that you just kind of disappear into.
Hmm. Definitely.
Caroline, have you read any of those books?
I have read of the first few. I haven't gotten as far as 5. It's one that I keep kind of coming back to, but I quite enjoyed it.
I have a feeling like because I know the TV series is extremely popular, and obviously the book series is too. If like book 9 is coming out, but that seems like maybe later down the road. That seems like an Overdue Finds episode, just like Outlander maybe.
Sign me up.
Caroline, what have you been enjoying? And is your pick this week the book that you kind of teased us with?
No, that was a bonus.
Oh, okay, bonus
6
Overdue
weeks to
Find.
live is a bonus overdue find. Because the one I was planning on talking about is a documentary called The Sit-In. Harry Belafonte hosts The Tonight Show. And this is a documentary that EPL has streaming through Hoopla, and it's about a week in 1968 where Harry Belafonte guest hosted the Tonight Show for a week. Johnny Carson stepped aside, brought him in, and he was able to program it with all of the guests he wanted to have. And so the week is just kind of a who's who of entertainment, politics, the civil rights movement. There was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Robert Kennedy, Aretha Franklin, Paul Newman, Dionne Warwick, Nipsey Russell, just this incredible panel for this entire week of shows. And so the documentary looks at the importance of having a figure, a African American man hosting an institution like The Tonight Show, the role that late night television played and has continued to play in American cultural politics. But also, there's a really interesting part from a TV preservation angle as well, because only 2 episodes of the entire week were preserved. The rest, because NBC until the 70s had a policy of just reusing tape. It didn't archive their TV shows. So there is little historical record of a lot of these older shows. And so only 2 full episodes of that week still exist, and the rest has kind of been reconstructed by audio and news accounts and other things. So there's a bit on that I enjoyed as a TV history nerd, I guess. And it's just really a really interesting look that ties together 1968, which was a huge year for American politics, contrasted against recent times and the role, again, that television has played with politics and this kind of cultural understanding. And plus, you just get to watch Harry Belafonte sing a lot, which is fun as well. So it's called The Sit-In. Harry Belafonte hosts The Tonight Show.
That sounds really good. Like you, Caroline, I am a huge TV historian nerd. I love learning about all of this stuff. Actually, it's funny. I know CNN, I think it was earlier this year. I'm not sure if you watched it. They had a series called The History of Late Night. And did you watch it?
I didn't, no.
Yeah,
But
I've got it like recorded on my PVR. Hopefully they release it on DVD. But yeah, I'm sure they probably cover it in that series. But you bring up a really interesting point, just with the history of the Tonight Show. It's hard to fathom now because there are so many different late night shows, and of course, like YouTube and everything else like that. Like right now, a lot of those shows are just kind of looking for these viral moments that they can easily share. But back in the day, like the Tonight Show was like the TV show. Like everybody in America, you weren't going to bed until you watched the Tonight Show. This is in the days where there's maybe only 2 or 3 networks on. So to have Harry Belafonte host in 1968 is like a huge deal back then. So that sounds really good. I got to watch that.
It's a really interesting documentary for sure.
Nice.
What have you been enjoying, Bryce? What's your overdue find?
So of course I mentioned I was off this last week, and as such, I ended up watching quite a few movies, which I'm sure I'll be sharing on future episodes of this show. But the one movie in particular that I want to talk about this week is a movie called Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk.
Yes.
So, Jamie, have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but it's definitely something that it's been on my radar for a while. It's on my list. And I love Bob Odenkirk, so.
Me too. I'm a huge fan, kind of even going back to his Mr. Show days.
Oh, yeah.
And Better Call. Most people know Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul.
And Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and Breaking Bad. That's right. So it's funny because Better Call Saul is so good that it's almost like I kind of forget that he was part of Breaking Bad at first.
Yeah, that it's a spin-off essentially, because it really could stand alone.
Yeah, definitely. So Nobody is a movie that just came out on DVD, and I want to give everybody a warning because I know we recently did an episode where we talked about different items that you can borrow while you wait. There's quite a few holds right now on Nobody, so if you're listening to this and you want to see it, throw your name on that holds list and it will go by quicker than you expect it will. But if you haven't heard of the movie, Bob Odenkirk plays an accountant named Hutch Mansell. Everything about his life is pretty dull. Like he wakes up, he exercises, he goes to work, comes home, goes to sleep, repeat. A lot of us kind of get into that cycle. So like basically it goes like this for years until his home is robbed one night. Basically what happens is he kind of lets it happen to keep his family safe. He wants to kind of try and intervene, but he can see, because he didn't intervene, that his family's lost a little bit of respect for him. So this ends up eating away at him until he decides that he's not going to be anyone's doormat anymore, since unknown to everybody around him, he was at one time a highly skilled secret agent. So he ends up
So
fighting. Exactly. So he ends up fighting a gang on a bus, which leads to the Russian mob coming after him and his family. There's amazing fight scenes, and the movie also too is surprisingly funny. Christopher Lloyd's in it, plays his father, so he's really good. So he's nice to see him in movies. Basically, the movie, if you're listening to this, yes, it does sound like John Wick. It is very similar to it in a lot of ways, obviously, but it's a little bit, it is a different movie. But if you do enjoy the John Wick series, I really think you'll like Nobody. So yeah, this is one Cheryl and I watched, and we both absolutely loved it. So if you're looking for like an action movie, you can just kind of turn your brain off and watch. Nobody's a great one.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
Definitely. So today, we teased it at the beginning. We're talking all about Degrassi. Caroline, you've got a huge smile on your face. I know you're ready to go. JV is too. So let's get into it a little bit, just with how maybe we first discovered Degrassi. Like, Jamie, what was your experience with Degrassi? Did you watch it when it first aired, or were you did you discover it more in reruns or on streaming services?
I am not quite old enough to have watched it when it was brand new. But I did watch it as reruns, probably, late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. My sister Carlina and I were obsessed and still are. She rewatches the entire series from start to finish, like every couple of years. It's hilarious. We can basically quote every episode. And yeah, it was on CBC reruns, and there's not a whole lot going on after school, as far as like TV programming. And yeah, we were just hooked, and I've seen every episode multiple times.
Caroline, how about you? Well, like, when did you kind of start watching it? I know you're a little bit younger than myself, so yeah, I'm curious to see when you picked it up.
Mine was a bit later than that. I would say in the mid to late 90s. I was definitely aware of Degrassi, and it's part of that, I think, just cultural piece of it. I had heard of it. I didn't really know what it was. When it was first airing, I think I had the idea that it was like for older kids because of like there was such like serious or dramatic things happening. I didn't really quite know what it was, but I knew what Degrassi meant. And then when I discovered it, it was on the CBC reruns, and I had a friend at school who was telling me all about like this show and how much she loved it and watching it. So then I started watching it, became kind of obsessed with it in the way of like the early days of the internet, where there's a little bit of information out there and you just try to like grab on and read everything that you can. That's how I get when I get into something. I kind of get obsessed by it and want to know everything about it. So at that time, there wasn't really a lot out there about Degrassi, but whatever was on the internet, I was trying to find it. And then I rolled that right into 2001 era, where they had the Degrassi reunions and then the launch of the Next Generation series, and so was watching that on and off as well. But it was definitely the CBC reruns, which were just on every day. When you kind of came home from school, it was there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really, that whole series is kind of like the perfect after school special, and obviously we'll share kind of some of the highlights of those here in a little bit. I know for myself, the one thing I don't think I've ever watched an episode, but like when I was younger, thinking back, the Kids of Degrassi Street was kind of where this thing all started. And doing kind of some research for today's episode, it debuted in 1979. So I was obviously like, I was alive, but I was obviously too young to even notice something like that. But I do recall like growing up, seeing it every now and then, and thinking it looked kind of like it was a show with kids, but it kind of looked like a documentary. So that I think kind of plays into maybe why the show, just in general, kind of over the years has appealed to so many people, is because it did seem so real. But junior high, I don't think I watched it like when it was actually on. I think I caught it in reruns. Degrassi High, though, I think I did end up watching like some of the episodes, like when they first did air. But I definitely saw like most of them kind of in reruns over the last few years anyway. The one thing I did want to mention though is I mentioned this before we started recording today. The show aired originally on CBC, and if anybody from CBC is listening, I'm sure there's lots of you, that I'm a little surprised CBC Gem doesn't carry the older series like Degrassi Junior High, or even the Kids from Degrassi Street. It's kind of weird.
I think there is a missed opportunity there. They are available. I think the YouTube channel Encore has them,
Hmm.
but it is something that I so strongly associate with the CBC that would just be where I would look for them if I didn't know that I could get the DVDs out of the Edmonton Public Library.
That's right.
And that to me is one thing that just kind of blows my mind about living in the future, by which I mean the present. And that's when I was first watching this, I made a reference to the internet already, but it's like I had to wait. Like I could get a list of all the episodes and I could see which episodes were, part of what season and where it was airing and things like that. But I had to wait to see it. I was dependent on when the TV was going to show me these episodes. And now I can watch almost any episode of Degrassi I want fairly easily. I have that thought a lot. It's one of like my favorite mind-blowing things, like this idea that I'm walking around with 30 seasons of The Simpsons in my pocket. Like this is just wild. And for me, because I remember looking into it and thinking like, oh, maybe I can buy some episodes. And WGBH Boston, which is the PBS affiliate of out of Boston, did sell like basically what was a class set of VHS tapes, which was just like one. It was every episode of the Degrassi Junior High and High, but it was clearly for like educational purposes, like someone to show in a classroom, and it was hundreds of dollars. And
Oh
I
yeah.
remember, and it was VHS, and I remember thinking like, I can't justify that for this, and now it's just so simple to have access to it.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to talk about it in a little while, but I remember watching School's Out, the
Mhm.
finale movie, and I remember watching it when it first aired. And I was so young that I had like a bedtime. And to this day, well, I did watch it in prep for today's episode, but I remember when I first watched it, I didn't never got to see like the ending of that special until like this past weekend when I watched it again, because it was like only on TV once,
Yeah.
and I missed it. And yeah, so yeah, we're living in the future, Caroline. We can just I pulled that thing up on my TV like it was nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
So with Degrassi, I mean, I didn't even put, I thought about it, but I didn't even put any interesting facts in the introduction for this, because we're just kind of assuming that people know what
Yeah.
Degrassi is. And I think we're right. I think we're making the correct assumption there. But with Degrassi, the series, are there any characters, episodes, or storylines that really stand out to you, Jamie?
besides all of them, I really tend to like a lot of the episodes that focus around some of the secondary characters rather than like the main ones. Like, I mean, obviously, any episode that involves Joey, Snake, and Wheels is like quintessential classic episode. But I often do like the ones too where they'll focus on another character, a secondary character, like Melanie and Diana and Maya and all those girls, like I always really liked those ones as well. There's a few episodes that stand out. And when I was thinking about it, I realized that two of my favorite episodes both involve sleepovers. And I don't know, maybe it's because I really liked sleepovers. I mean, what teenage girl didn't?
It's very relatable. It's a very relatable setup.
It is. And I think it was also kind of fun when an episode took place not inside the school. So there's one that I can think of called The All Nighter, and it was from Degrassi High. And it was it was a surprise birthday party for her that her friends were throwing. And Kathleen had found a couple of joints in the tampon dispenser in the girls' washroom that Luke had hidden in there, of course. And she brought them to this slumber party, and so they all got stoned. And I just remember thinking, mostly when I watched it later on, reruns as a teenager or even in my adulthood watching it, like how over dramatic it was. But it reminded me of sleepovers with my girlfriends as a teenager. I mean, we were over dramatic about everything, really, And so that was definitely one of my favorite ones. And the other one that also involves a sleepover is the classic episode Trust Me. Do you guys know what one that is?
They steal Snake's parents' car. No,
Yeah.
Wheel's parents' car. Somebody's parents'
it was
car.
Snake's parents' car. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because his parents were out of town, and so at first they wanted to have a party, and Snake was like, no. So he just had Wheels and Joey over for a sleepover, and I think it was Wheels had an optometry appointment the next morning, and they overslept. And in order to get him there on time, they stole Snake's parents' car, and hilarity ensues. Love it. One of my favorite ones ever. I think that was season 2. So that's a pretty old one, but that's probably one that I've watched. I can't even count how many times, honestly. Probably double digits, we're talking. Easy.
Yeah. There are a lot of, you mentioned the Joey Snake Wheels dynamic, and there are a lot that are really great in there because they were 3 separate characters. Joey, clearly the leader of the group, the person talking you into stealing your parents' car, or charming Caitlin to win a bet or something like that. And then you had Snake, who was kind of more by the book, a little nervous about things.
Yeah, a little more reserved maybe, or
Yeah, more serious. And then Wheels was just kind of along for the ride sometimes, but then he was the one that he had a lot happen to him in the show.
For sure. And he was a dynamic character because he started off in the younger seasons being pretty innocent, really. And then, by the end of School's Out, things changed.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah. Bryce, I know you have some thoughts about Wheels' dad.
Yeah, I made a joke in our last episode during the preview. I said Wheel's dad is a bit of a jerk. There is a very funny parody Twitter account called Wheel's Dad, and I totally forgot when I made that reference that Wheel's parents had died in a car accident.
Well,
was it his birth father?
Yeah, he was adopted, and he goes to visit his biological father, and he is kind of a jerk.
Yeah, he plays like, I don't know, he's like in a rock band or something. He's like a drummer. And that was like one of the kind of storylines I kind of remembered a little bit. But yeah, kind of doing my research and everything. But I maybe take back that comment that Wheel's dad was a jerk.
Do either of you remember what the name of the band was that Wheels' birth father was in? It was like Mike and the something. That's going to drive me nuts.
Oh, they are called. So Google, one of our other co-hosts on this show, let me know that Wheel's dad's band name was Mike and the Drifters.
Nice. Okay.
Sure.
Very 80s band name, right?
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of things that stood out to me. So I guess, first of all, some characters. I had a total crush on Caitlin growing up. She was definitely one of my favorite characters on the show. It was also interesting too to see the character of Spike as well. So I think, if I recall, she obviously she had a baby while she was in high school. I think that storyline started when the show was like Degrassi Junior High,
Yeah.
even.
Mhm,
So
it did.
yeah, so which kind of made it even more, just to kind of show you this was not a typical teen show. This isn't, obviously this came out before, shows like Beverly Hills 90210 came out, or Saved by the Bell, but this show let like very early on, like, hey, we're dealing with some some tough topics that actual real teens deal with every day. Yeah, so it was interesting because I almost like to think that Degrassi was Canada's version of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. We had all these, mature themes, like, there's talk about sex and abortion and, death, and there's just every car theft. Exactly. Everything in between. Sleepovers, stuff like that. So
That's, I think, part of what Degrassi's charm is. And in the episode where Spike finds out that she's pregnant, she her scenes of going and getting going to Shoppers Drug Mart, so it's already like very
Canadian.
classic Canadian.
Yep.
And getting a test, having to hide it from her mom, and then eventually going to a clinic. Those scenes are intercut with a subplot about Melanie and Yick going ice skating on a date. And it's very sweet. It's very like junior high romance. Like, it's this super serious thing next to two kids having a great time going ice skating. And that's what I think Degrassi was. It was a mixture of all of the things that being a kid could be.
So the episode that really stands out to me were, I believe it was like the very first episode of Degrassi High, and that's the one called A New Start. So I believe it starts with like all the kids going to high school for the very very first time. Now, what makes this episode stand out a little bit is that, of course, we have the twins. So there's Erica and what's the other? Heather and Erica. Erica thinks she is pregnant. So she's nervous about it, and she doesn't want to tell her parents. And they end up getting a home pregnancy test, and she lies.
Takes an hour. I'm pretty sure that the pregnancy test takes they have to wait an hour for results.
Which is another testament to the fact that we're living in the future.
That's right.
What is it, 2 seconds?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Anyway, Erica finds out. She kind of lies to say she's not pregnant, but she actually is, and she contemplates getting an abortion. So I believe this actually goes on over the span of 2 episodes. And of course, she talks with Spike, or I believe her sister talks with Spike about an abortion, and Spike shares her experiences with having a child. And it's a very, very serious topic. And yeah, it's an interesting way to start off the series, and you're going, the producers are going with this storyline that is so serious. And even today, if you were to, have a TV series with high school kids, and you were to start off with an abortion storyline, it would still be controversial, let alone in like 1990 or 1991 when this show started. So that for me was the one that I recall seeing the most. I don't know if maybe we watched it in school, but that whole kind of abortion plot line and everything was one of the ones that stand out the most to me.
I remember from that episode too, a scene from their class. I think it's English class, because they're reading Lord of the Flies, which is what I read in my grade 9 English class. And in terms of the episode, nobody wants to talk about it. So the teacher's like, all right, what do you want to talk about? And I think Erica puts up her hand and said, what do people think about abortion? And then everyone, like the class, like erupts, and she just sits there like taking it all in. And then the teacher is finally
Mhm.
like, all right, glad to hear you guys can actually talk. Next time, let's make it about Lord of the Flies. And there were like their textbooks looked like the textbooks I was using at the time, even though it was a
Mhm.
couple years later. Like there was just that authenticity of it, and a lot has been written about how with the kids, the actors on the show, they went for real kids who didn't have a lot of acting experience, but were kind of enthusiastic or eager to give it a try, and they didn't put them in a lot of makeup or give them like they wore their own clothes. Spike's hair was the hair that she was wearing when she started the show. So it there was that authenticity about it that hasn't really been in any other show.
No, and I think that's what I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier about how that's one of that's one of the things I think that does appeal to a lot of people about the show. I know Degrassi in general has some very famous fans. Director, one of my favorites, Kevin Smith, is a huge fan, and I believe he even actually appeared on a Next Generation episode or Next
He
Class.
he kind of broke up Joey and Caitlin.
What?
What?
Yeah,
Why would he do
that's
that?
that's
He's
canon.
supposed to be a fan.
Yeah.
I
Although
didn't know
really, I'm
that.
sort of surprised that they would have stayed together beyond school's out. But
Yes.
That
yeah,
is a
I've never
plot
seen the Next
line.
Generation,
Yeah,
so I
that
don't
is
know.
it is an ongoing plot line on the early
Nice.
seasons of Next Generation.
Love
But
it.
yeah,
But
Kevin Smith, he comes to make a movie at Degrassi.
but yeah, like
So cool.
the whole thing though, and even if you go back and just even watch clips of Kids from Degrassi Street, like it just has this like very it just everything looks like it's a documentary. And I know sometimes like even when you get to junior high and Degrassi High, yes, some of the acting can be a little cheesy at times, but I think that's what kind of makes it feel so much more authentic and real, I guess.
And I think it's that piece, like you were saying, Jamie, uh, it's kind of an extension of the stuff you were doing yourself. Like it's be watching their sleepover is like being at your own sleepover because it's just real people hanging out doing it. Like we don't. It's not that our lives were exactly like Degrassi, but there was that similarness to it. Going back to the sleepover episode, Kathleen was an interesting character for me because when I first
Mhm.
watched the show, I had little time or patience for Kathleen. She's very uptight.
Yeah.
She's
Super type
very,
A.
yeah, like really tough to be around in many
Mhm.
ways, like always uh but then going back and rewatching it and thinking about some of her storylines and what the character had going on in her life, I think I have more empathy now for Kathleen as a character than I did when I was first watching this show.
I agree. Yeah. She did have a lot. I mean, like her mother was an alcoholic, and then later she had that abusive boyfriend. And it just seemed like she was one of those people that was like really overcompensating for maybe the chaos in her home life. And of course, as a child, I didn't pick up on that. But rewatching it later as an adult, I agree. I also had a lot more empathy for her and more
Mhm.
compassion for her later when I understood like what her deal was.
Yeah. Other classic moments involve Joey walking through the cafeteria naked.
Yep.
That was, I think,
Iconic.
one of the more famous moments of the series.
Hmm.
Caroline, did you have like a favorite episode or anything?
I think some of the episodes that were about Joey and Caitlin because they had this like believable on and off again romance where they were different, but in a way that made sense together. It was kind of low key epic in a way that I think a lot of my like understanding and processing like the couples in school were, where it just seemed kind of dramatic, but then looking back it's really not, and everyone's kind of doing their thing and working out. So uh I really like the ones where Joey and Caitlin kind of get together, and then later on near the end of the series when it kind of points towards them maybe rekindling something.
Mhm. All right, so we've talked about this a little bit. It's come up so far, but let's dive into the Degrassi High series ending TV movie, School's Out. So I have a feeling we could have probably just done a whole episode on this movie. So a warning: there's definitely going to be some spoilers. So we'll put in our
Spoiler alert!
Jamie, I have to ask you, what are your thoughts on the School's Out TV movie?
I loved it, still love it. I think it's just such a classic ending to Degrassi. It felt so like grown up at the time. Like I would have only been like 10 years old when it originally came out, and I feel like I would have watched that when it was new, but I'm not 100% certain. Um, it was funny because I remember watching it as a 10-year-old and thinking, wow, everyone just becomes this like instant adult as soon as they graduate high school. That is inaccurate in every way. I mean, watching that, looking back, you're like, no. But yeah, I think it had it all in classic Degrassi fashion. I mean, it had like people cheating on each other, there was drinking, a car accident, a wedding, and most importantly, swearing.
Hmm.
That was a big thing. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, whoa, they're swearing on Degrassi. So I think that's part of why it also felt kind of like grown up to be watching that or something.
I like to joke around that I think Canada in general lost its innocence the day that movie came out, because I remember watching it too.
Mhm.
I think we were probably about the same age, Jamie, because I think it came out in like 91. And so I would have been like 10 or
Mm.
11 and when I first watched it. And same thing. I just remember like when that F bomb, there's two of them.
Yep.
When both of those F bombs dropped, it was like, whoa,
Totally.
like this is on CBC. And
I
apparently, I think that
know.
was like the very first time like CBC was like,
I
Yeah.
think it
all right,
was.
Yeah.
we're going to allow you to drop the F bomb, an F bomb here, basically.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Caroline, I'm still waiting to get approval for us to drop an F bomb on this show, and I don't think
I
it's going to
know.
happen anytime
I
soon.
don't see that happening.
I know. It's like that the lines where it cut. So I know we're talking all around it now. But the line, like, cuz Snake says it first towards Joey.
Yep.
Caitlin overhears, and then she says it, and like the line is just so good. So the plot of School's Out loosely is that they've graduated. Caitlin took some accelerated classes and can graduate with the older class, which is like Lucy, the twins, Spike, that kind of age. And Joey, because he had repeated a grade before, is still going back to high school. So Joey and Caitlin are together, but they're kind of looking at different futures. Joey takes this opportunity to propose to Caitlin, who says, "Nah, I'm not feeling it." They continue dating through the summer. Desperate, Joey is like desperate to have sex for the first time. So he also starts dating Tessa Campanelli, who has been a character going back a long time on Degrassi, but was always kind of like a background character or supporting character. Never, she had a couple episodes near the end of the series, but this was really her moment. So Joey's dating both Tessa and Caitlin through the summer. Snake is also trying to get a girl by being a lifeguard. It's not working out for him. Joey sleeps with Tessa, then with Caitlin. Then Caitlin decides she does want to marry Joey, and she's going
That's
to give up.
correct. Yep.
She's going to like give up going, I think, to Carlton with
Yes.
Lucy.
Lucy, yeah. They were going to be roommates.
Yeah,
Right.
and so Tessa gets pregnant, has an abortion, doesn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And Snake is so upset. Like he's just upset with Joey for being this like field playing cad.
Yeah, because Snake's upset because he gets this summer job as a lifeguard, and he thinks that he's gonna be a lifeguard. He's surrounded by all these beautiful women all day in bikinis or whatever, and he thinks he's gonna have the summer of his life, which doesn't turn out to be the case at all. So he's getting a little frustrated.
So Wheels, whose plan is to fix up his car and drive to Alberta to be with his girlfriend Karen.
He wants to drive to Calgary. This is going to be a new chapter in his life.
And we don't really know that much about the girlfriend, other than Wheels at some point has had sex, because once Joey has sex, they team up and like just give Snake like endless teasing about his status as someone who has not slept with someone. And so Snake is kind of pushed to his boiling point, flips out, loses it on Joey. Caitlin overhears, breaks up. No. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, she does.
In the moment.
She like throws the ring that Joey got her back, and she's like, like she's like, I was gonna like change my, really her whole life for Joey, to be with Joey. And she also then at some point was like, yeah, we're engaged now. Like she was all in. So then after, she hears about Joey and Tessa all summer, that's it for them. It's all over.
So Wheels gets upset with Snake. He's like, why are you ruining this for Joey? Snake, still boiling, takes it out on Wheels. Lucy comes in, tries to break it up, is like, hey, Wheels, let's go get some chips. They leave the party.
Worst decision ever.
That they're at. Wheels has been drinking through the entire movie, but particularly this scene. And then Amy and Allison get in a canoe accident. Like they tip over their canoe.
Right, they were drinking too.
Snake, the lifeguard, has to save them, and then he breaks down because it's just so much. And then someone says, hey, where's Wheels and Lucy? Cut to this horrible car wreck.
Yeah, and by the way, it is the most depressing, like, side swerve. It's not at the ending of the movie, but like it's just that whole subplot in itself is the most depressing downer thing ever, because you see this accident and then you see the cops like carrying the body of like a 2-year-old boy who dies, who Wheels has killed now in a drunk driving accident. Like they have this kid like wrapped up in a blanket, and the cops are just like, so preventable.
Awful.
Yeah, like it's
Degrassi holds nothing back. I think that's what makes it so special.
The other part of this that's revealed in the episode is that Lucy is revealed that she's going to Carleton to take film studies. So during this accident, not only is she injured, but she's blinded from the accident. So she can't go to school to live out her dream and take film studies because she's blind now. Yeah, the whole thing is just super depressing.
The part that bothers me the most is that Wheels took no responsibility for it and blamed Lucy. Well,
that's right.
It's not my fault. Lucy wanted chips. That's the famous line that I always remember and has become an inside joke with my sister. And just nothing. It's not my fault, Joey. Or maybe it was Snake who had gone to visit him in jail or something.
No, Snake didn't.
Was it Joey? Okay.
Although it is revealed at the very end, though, that Wheels, it's through a conversation between Snake and Joey, that Wheels apparently will be pleading guilty, but they say, like, yeah, he'll be in jail for quite a while. So, I mean, his whole character, like, it's just very sad because obviously he loses his parents to a drunk driver, and then here we go. You know, he's 18 now. He wants to start a new chapter in his life and get out from, you know, living with his grandma. Wants to come out west here to Alberta, and then he kills a 2-year-old boy, you know, nearly kills a school friend, and, you know, ruins his life and has to spend some time in jail. Like, it's just total, like, bummer ending for his character.
The movie then jumps to like Thanksgiving era. It's Simon and Alexa's wedding.
Can we talk about Simon's perm for a second here?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Like, and they make a point too of saying like, oh, Alexa did his hair, and it's like, was it actually like permed, or did she just like take a very tiny curling iron to it? Either way, like, what?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I don't know.
sidetrack, but
No,
why
it
not?
is a very good point. The other point on this is that it has a little bit of the points around the fact that this is TV, because at the wedding, things like the character Tabby, who was one of Dwayne's friends, she was the
Oh,
one who
yeah.
ran around, like she was always doing the product placement of the Dips chocolate bars
Yeah.
or granola
Or
bars.
pudding.
Yeah, she always had the product placement of that. She is like in tight with Alexa at the wedding, and it has to be because this was an actress that they could get for it, but there's like no mention of Michelle, Alexa's
Oh,
longtime
right.
best friend, around this. So there are some elements where it's like, oh, okay, this is. I'll allow this suspension of disbelief that you're suddenly so close with Tabby, but yeah, they get married. Alexa's dress is so poofy.
Yes. To be fair, it was the early 90s.
Early 90s, but it's
Yeah.
so poofy. They're ecstatic. And then at the wedding reception, Snake has brought a girlfriend from university that he's met, and he kind of mends fences a little bit with Joey. And then Joey and Caitlin kind of have a dance together as old friends.
What I find so funny about that ending when I was watching it again was that, so they have everybody has this big blow up thing. It's like right before everybody's heading off to university. So this is like last weekend in August, probably, maybe first weekend, maybe the long weekend in September. So the wedding takes place in October, because they've mentioned this probably 3 or 4 times throughout the whole movie already. So really, they haven't seen each other in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. And it's so funny because like when they come together, it's like you said, Caroline, it's like they're old friends. It's like,
Yep.
it's almost like they haven't seen each other in like 10 years. It's like,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
you finally got a
remember-
girlfriend.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, remember when we used to date like
Yeah.
3 weeks ago?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's so funny too, because like I was watching it again, and I remember they kept saying October. And I was like, well, maybe it was the following October, but I'm like, no, because they even bring up like Wheel's court date is coming up, and so it's clearly just
Simon
been
and
within-
Alexa could not have waited until the next October to get married.
No.
Well, Alexa couldn't, and Simon will just do whatever she says.
So
Yes.
true. So
Yeah.
true. I watched it. I didn't watch it when it was on. I didn't see it until 2001, so 10 years after it first came out, leading up to the launch of Degrassi: The Next Generation. CTV was doing a special airing of some of the older episodes that had aired on CBC, and one of them was like a Saturday, like a weekend night, they did Schools Out, and this was the first time I had seen it. I'd read about it because I was trawling the internet looking for all this info, so I knew the basic plot, but I was watching it and I would just had this reaction of like, what is happening? But one of my favorite things about Schools Out is that it does capture that dramaticness of it. Like I can totally see, especially in that flip from going from high school to starting university, of being away from your friends for like 6 weeks and coming back and it being like this big reunion and things. That's true to life, I think. So
Yeah.
I liked that part of it.
Yeah, it's I mean, if you haven't watched it, by all means try and find a copy of it and definitely watch it.
It is included in the DVD edition of Degrassi High. So if you get the set, it has the 2 seasons of Degrassi High and the TV movie Schools Out.
Yeah, it does do, we kind of poke fun at some of the plot lines in this movie, but it does a really good job of really wrapping up that whole series.
Mhm.
And Caroline, you mentioned this on the last episode, and of course I'm watching it again. I'm killing myself laughing because, of course, the music by Gowan is very prominent.
Moonlight Desires is like it's the song. So Tessa is making a grown-up dinner for Joey of spaghetti, and she burns everything, and they're trying to get the smoke detector from going off, and then they're on the couch making out, and it's Moonlight Desires playing. So perfect. It's just such a good summer movie.
Yeah, I added that thing to my Spotify playlist immediately when that song came up.
Yeah.
Oh, can I tell my story of my Schools Out screening that I went to?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, please.
Yeah. So it was January 2020, and there was supposed to be one in Edmonton that got canceled, unfortunately, but there was one in Calgary. So me and my friend Andrea went to it, and we got the VIP tickets, which included like a really cool swag bag where we got a poster and some stickers and stuff like that. And there was also a Q&A and a meet and greet because Joey and Caitlin were there, which was like so amazing. And so it was at the Globe Theater, which is like an old kind of like art house theater similar to like the Princess or the Garneau or Metro, I guess it's called, here in Edmonton. And it was so amazing. So we got to watch the Schools Out movie. Maybe I'll just redo that because I was like saying a lot.
That's okay.
Oh, well. So they screened the movie, and then afterward there was a Q&A, and I learned some interesting things. And it was funny when you guys were talking about kind of how a lot of the actors like wore their own clothes and stuff like that. They did a lot of the time, but they also got like a huge part of their costume wardrobe from thrift stores, which isn't overly shocking. So that was an interesting little fact. My friend Chris, I wanted him to come because he's like this huge Degrassi fan, but he was too cheap to pay for the VIP tickets. But he did give me some stuff to get Joey and Caitlin to sign. So he had like his DVD set or whatever. And he wanted me to ask Caitlin, or, Stacey Mistison, to write on it to Chris, you were beep, Tessa Campanelli, the classic line from Schools Out. And I was like, I can't ask her that. I can't. And then, so I did. I was like, this is what my friend wants you to write on this. I'm like, but I would never, like, I can't ask you to do that. And she just kind of goes, no, I'll write that. That's fine. And so she did.
Nice.
She wrote it on his DVD set, which was like so amazing.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And I was telling Joey about, and then also I accidentally called him Joey at one point too, which was like really hilarious because that's not actually his name, obviously. But he signed something as well. And I told him how my friend Chris was too cheap to pay for the VIP tickets. And he wrote on it, Chris, you cheap. Yeah, it was pretty good. I got to hug them.
Oh, wow.
It was so amazing. And Kathleen came too, because Kathleen actually lives in Calgary.
Yeah.
She is
It's like a doctor
she works
now.
she works at U of A. She's an associate professor, or sorry, not U of A, U of C. She's an associate professor in the Department of Community Health Sciences. So pretty cool.
Wow.
Can you imagine going to university and like Kathleen is your teacher? Like that seems really on brand, doesn't it,
Yeah.
for Kathleen even to become like this professor and all that? But I would find that so distracting. I don't know if I would learn anything.
No, and I'm sure she probably just gets, I'm guessing it's probably cooled off a little bit now, but like probably those first few
Probably.
years of students coming in, probably just a ton of Degrassi questions. And she's probably like, last class of the semester, I will answer all of your Degrassi questions. Okay.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's too bad the one in Edmonton didn't go through because it was going to be at the Starlight Room. So they were going to have the film screening, and then after they were going to have an 80s and 90s dance party.
Oh my God.
And it was canceled. I'm like, what? How fun would that be? And I hope there would be Gowan.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It would have to be
I'd be
blared.
disappointed if
Lots
there
of
weren't.
lots of slow dancing to Moonlight Desire. So
Yeah.
So I've referenced it a few times while we've been talking. Have either of you watched any of the newer incarnations of Degrassi, like Degrassi: The Next Generation, Degrassi, or Degrassi Next Class?
I recall when Degrassi, I think it was Degrassi: The Next Generation was the first kind of relaunch, right?
Oh.
I recall it was like early 2000s, I believe you said, when they were promoting it. And I believe Cheryl and I were really excited because we both loved Degrassi. And I think we watched maybe one or two episodes and just couldn't get into it. Very similar to it just seemed, I don't know. It didn't seem as, I know I've said this a lot, it didn't seem as authentic as the original series. It was like all the kids that they had cast, nothing against them personally, but they just seemed like, your typical child actors, I guess, versus kind of what we got with the original Degrassi series. So yeah, like I said, only a few episodes for me. I know obviously one of the other seasons introduced the world to Drake, but that was really it for me. Jamie, did you watch any of them?
I may have caught an episode or two here and there, but I also couldn't really get into it. And I agree that it seemed a little too polished, whereas one of the things that was charming about Degrassi was how low budget it was. But no, I never really got into it. I think also, I was an adult at that point when it was airing too, so it didn't really appeal as much.
Caroline, did you watch any of them?
Oh yeah,
Watch the whole thing.
I've seen everything. With Degrassi: The Next Generation, I was definitely watching because I was such a big fan of Degrassi, and the first the first episode of Degrassi: The Next Generation is set on a school reunion, and it brings back a lot of the old characters, the original characters from Degrassi Junior High and High. So even if you're just watching, like in the background, it's still the same thing. Like you see people you recognize, but it's this springboard for a story that's set around Spike's daughter Emma, who's going into Degrassi Community School, and it then follows her and her friends down there. Snake is a teacher at the new Degrassi, and so he is featured throughout most of the seasons of all the way up to Next Class. But it definitely switches. Like it was on for a long time, and not only became more like other TV shows with that polished sense of like drama, like everything just got highlighted. There were, New York penthouses and vendettas with the mob and all these different storylines.
We
What?
were way past the references of Shoppers Drug Mart. Is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was an element of it. Like when one of the last seasons, like they're all talking about what they want to do after they graduate, and everyone wants to go to like NYU and go right to like Hollywood or Nashville and do these things. And it in the original series, like Carleton is a real university, and like Lucy's boyfriend Bronco wore a U of T T-shirt that I also had. Like it there was more I think of those local references, and whether this was because it was being now sold and airing and quite a big deal in the US, which would be a larger TV market, it just didn't feel like the same type of show, but it was still one that I enjoyed.
So, before we wrap up here today, why do you think the Degrassi brand has endured for over 40 years, kind of dating back to 1979 when Kids of Degrassi first came out? Jamie?
I think because it's so relatable. And I think also as Canadians, there's not a lot of Canadian programming. And I think we could see ourselves in the characters, we could see ourselves in the setting. We're so inundated with American content that I think having that Canadian content made it feel really real and made it feel special and like I don't know, they're very relatable. The characters are relatable, and it also touched on issues that most people were kind of afraid to talk about, especially on TV and especially at that time.
I agree. I think that sense of it as being Canadian, having that familiarity. As you were talking, the what came to mind was Sue Johansson made
Oh
a
yeah,
appearance as Dr.
amazing.
Sally.
Hmm.
So when I think who was it, Arthur
It was
and Nick?
Arthur.
Yeah, and like asking if there was something wrong with him because his body was doing these things, and
Having dreams.
yeah, and it's Sue Johansson, and like at that time she was on TV talking about this stuff, and it's just a reference that I experienced as well, knowing who she was. So I think it has it's both dated and timeless, and
Totally.
it's also fun.
I think also too, watching, especially watching like Schools Out and, watching old episodes, like it's like when you went to high school, it's like I could see different, like I knew who like Joey was in my school or Wheels was or whoever, Caitlin and, all this other stuff. So yeah, like you said, it was just very relatable. It was similar to what we were talking about in our Canadian music episode, Caroline, about how you were proud that this was a Canadian show. Like if I'm putting together a Mount Rushmore of Canadian shows, Degrassi is 100% included in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Me too.
Before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, can you let everyone know what we'll be chatting about on our next episode, which will be available on Friday, July 30th?
Caroline, on the next episode, we're going to be talking all about sports movies. So I'm pretty excited about this one. So this came up recently when we talked about the Bad News Bears. And with the Olympics starting soon, it seems like a great time to cover them. Join us as we talk about the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the pleasure of watching it all from the couch. There's going to be lots to talk about underdogs in this episode, I think, about sports movies.
Triumphant endings.
That's right. Yeah.
Our first roundtable question: which Degrassi character would you want to be paired with on a school project? Jamie.
I had to think, I think I would choose Lucy. Lucy is smart, and I think she would pull her weight in a project, but she's also fun and cool. And I would hope that we would get to work on the project at her house where her parents are never home, and that she'd maybe let me borrow some of her clothes.
Yeah, and she also had the video camera, so you guys
Yeah, that's
probably would
right.
do like a video essay or
Oh, as if
something
we
like
wouldn't.
really cutting edge. Yeah,
100%.
good. That's a really good answer. Bryce?
So, thinking about going to high, if this was, it was like high school Bryce, we've got two answers here. One would probably be Caitlin, and not to sound creepy, but it would be to like maybe get to know her a little bit better, and of course try to maybe awkwardly ask her out. So that would be mine. But Caitlin, of course, was a good student. But if that didn't work out, Snake, just because I know that we would probably get a really good mark with that. Caroline, how about you?
Yeah, my answer, I was torn between Kathleen and Caitlin, and I just didn't want to work with Kathleen. So I think Caitlin would have fun. She's committed. I could see it going well.
Nice.
But not as uptight
Uh,
as Kathleen. She would take over.
No. She would take over and it would just like probably put me down. It just would not be good for my self-esteem.
It would end in tears.
Yeah. Second question, Joey, Snake, and Wheels, also known as the Zit Remedy, also known as the Zits, famously knew only one song, their iconic hit, Everybody Wants Something. If you were their manager, what second song would you recommend that they cover? Jamie?
Well, it would obviously have to be some kind of CanCon. And at first it comes to mind Gowan, maybe Rush, because they were both used in total excess throughout the series. But I think, like, how meta would it be if they covered a song from one of the two fictional bands of the series, the Savages or the Gourmet Scum? That's what I
Yeah.
would choose.
Maybe in something by Mike and the Drifters as well, right?
Oh, that would be, yeah. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Gourmet Scum seem to have a really diverse fan base, given that their name was Gourmet Scum.
Right?
Not
Yeah.
a great band name.
No.
But everyone was into it.
And I saw lots of people wearing Gourmet Scum t-shirts at that Schools Out event I went to as well. I don't know where they got them, but I want one.
The t-shirt I was laughing at the most while watching that was Joey's Naughty and Nice t-shirt
Yeah.
that Tessa gives him as a birthday present. I
Yeah.
thought that was
And he
that
has
was
that
really
tuxedo one too. The
Yes.
tuxedo shirt that he wears.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Bryce, what do you think the Zit Remedy should cover?
You know, they're not the greatest musicians, so I thought something that kind of would fit them, that I think they could probably get away with playing because the lyrics are very easy, would be Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss. I think that's a song that they could probably do an okay job of
I
covering.
could
So that's
see
what I would
that.
recommend. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Caroline, how about you? What do you want them to cover?
Mine is a total cheat. It's everybody wants something, but in French. And I think they could really
Oh.
expand into the Quebec market. They could like double it. They already know the chords. They just need to like phonetically learn the words and then be all set. So I think that's they just need another version. And then maybe after that, maybe like a disco remix of Everybody Wants
Ooh.
Something.
Like it.
Or and then acoustic or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Like a
I just want
ballad, a slow,
yeah.
folky ballad. Oh God.
yeah. I just want like an album that's just full of different versions of Everybody Wants Something.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie. Is there anything coming up at EPL that you would like people to know about?
Well, we already talked about, or Bryce already mentioned, summer starts. I just wanted to mention that this week we now are having our settlement practitioners back in the branches. And they are from an organization called ESA, so it's the Edmonton Immigrant Services Association. And what they do is they help people with common questions about moving to Canada and settling in. It's a very, very valuable resource, especially in communities that have a lot of newcomers, such as Millwoods. They meet clients through prearranged appointments, and they're available at several different branches, including Millwoods. They are also around at Abbotsfield, Castle Downs, Clairview, Londonderry, Woodcroft, White Mud Crossing, and the Stanley Milner Library as well. So check our website for their calendars to see which branch they're available at, if that is something that interests you or that you have a need for.
Great. Or maybe know someone who
Or know somebody, exactly.
Yeah, so we'll have a link to that information in our show notes as well, in our item list. So we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you've subscribed so that you automatically get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And as always, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend about the show.
Yeah, today's episode was a blast. And don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And if you would like to share some of your Degrassi memories with us, email us at podcast@epl.ca or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.